Like you promised. We were meant to rule together.
Lena, look at me. Hillview needs a Luna who can lead us to war.
Please help me!
No, not like this.
I don't want to die!
She's innocent.
Your bloodline was never strong enough. This is for the kingdom's future.
After you die, I will be the true Luna. Light the pyre, my king.
The auspicious hour has come. Council Master, light the fire.
No. Alaric, don't do this so I can't bring in your heir!
Prologue. The torch fell from his hand into the kindling below. I didn't scream for mercy. I had none to beg from the man who once called me his soulmate. The cedarwood crackled to life beneath my feet, and I watched Alara clutch Alaric's arm, her face lit with triumph, wearing the Luna crown I had polished with my own tears. Phoenix goddess of the eternal flame. My father's voice trembled from the crowd, reading from an ancient scroll. Accept this offering. Grant our Alpha King a worthy heir, and bring victory to Hillview's armies. Victory? They wanted power built on my ashes. The flames climbed my legs like hungry serpents, but the pain that should have made me weep instead awakened something buried deep in my soul, a heat that didn't burn from without, but blazed from within. In those final mortal moments, as smoke filled my lungs and my skin began to char, I tasted something impossible, the memory of 1,000 sunrises, the weight of wings made of starfire, the knowledge of deaths and rebirths stretching back before the first wolf howled at the moon. The human Lena, the gentle Luna who embroidered silk robes for her rival and believed love could conquer ambition, she died in those first few seconds. But something far older, far more terrible, began to stir in the inferno. Before we continue, this story will set your soul on fire. If you want to witness the ultimate revenge of a goddess betrayed, subscribe now. Don't make me hunt you down. Click that button, or you'll miss the moment the Alpha King realizes he didn't kill his wife, he awakened a deity. My divine consciousness erupted like a solar flare. Welcome back, vessel of the eternal flame. You have tasted the betrayal of mortals. The voice inside me wasn't foreign, it was the truest part of myself, finally unshackled. Memories flooded through me like molten gold. I was there when the first Alpha King, Theron the Brave, knelt before me in the sacred grove 300 years ago. The kingdom was dying, wolves turning feral, pups born without the spark. He had nothing to offer but his desperation. "Phoenix goddess," young Theron had pleaded, his face streaked with ash from burying his entire pack. "If you grant my bloodline the strength to unite the wolf clans, I swear on my very soul we will protect the weak, honor the bond of mate and Luna, and never let ambition poison our hearts. If my descendants break this oath, let the flames consume us all." On a whim, I had blessed him. I gave his bloodline the alpha spark, watched as he built Hillview from ruins into a kingdom of honor. For centuries, his descendants kept the oath. The land prospered. Love was sacred. Lunas were cherished as the heart of the kingdom. But oaths, like wood, eventually rot. I watched from within the inferno as they cheered my death, their faces twisting into grotesque masks of greed and relief. Alaric raised Alara's hand high, and the crowd roared approval not for love, but for the promise of war and conquest she represented. They had forgotten that peace was the greatest victory. And in my womb, I felt it, a heartbeat that pulsed not with the rhythm of a wolf, but with the cadence of the sun itself. My unborn son wasn't just Alaric's heir, he was the Phoenix goddess's chosen vessel, the first solar wolf, born to end the cycle of dark ambition that now poisoned the throne. The ropes binding me to the stake turned to ash. My charred skin sloughed away like a serpent's molt, revealing flesh that glowed like dawn. I didn't die. I didn't even suffer. I ascended. But I didn't reveal myself, not yet. Let them think they'd won. Let Alaric crown his mistress and plan his wars. Let them drain the kingdom's resources and turn wolves into weapons. Because I would return when their wells ran dry, when their crops withered, when even the rain refused to fall on land cursed by broken oaths. I would return when they finally understood what they had done. They think they've cleared the path for a new era, I thought, my consciousness rising above the flames like smoke. But they've only set the world on fire, and I am the queen of flames. As I dissolved into sparks and smoke, vanishing before their eyes could comprehend what they were seeing, I left them with a whisper that shook the very foundations of Hillview. With my blood, I lay an eternal curse. Phoenix goddess, open your eyes. This dynasty built on betrayal will burn until only ash and truth remain. The rain they prayed for? It would come, but not as a blessing, as tears of a goddess acid that would poison their fields, exposing the rot beneath their golden facade. The game had begun. And this time, I wasn't playing the role of the sacrificial Luna. I was the deity they should have remembered to fear. The sacred elder forest accepted me without question. Ancient trees bowed their branches, creating a canopy of protection as I stumbled through the underbrush, my body still radiating heat from the transformation. Each footstep left scorched earth behind, wildflowers blooming instantly in the ash. I collapsed beside a volcanic spring, steam rising to meet the dawn. My hands instinctively moved to my belly, where the solar wolf's heartbeat had grown stronger, almost defiant. "We're alive," I whispered, tears evaporating before they could fall. "And soon, little one, we'll show them what happens when you try to burn the sun." Behind me, in the kingdom I'd called home, the first signs of decay were already beginning. Chapter 1: Ashes to Wings. I woke to the sound of my own heartbeat, or rather, two heartbeats, syncopated like a war drum calling me back from the void. The forest floor beneath me was warm, almost hot, as though the earth itself had cradled me through the night. I opened my eyes and saw not the charred ruins of the execution square, but a canopy of ancient oaks whose leaves shimmered with an unnatural golden light. Dawn filtered through the branches, but the glow didn't come from the sun alone. It radiated from my own skin, pulsing in waves that made the shadows dance. I sat up slowly, expecting pain. The memory of fire eating through flesh, of bones cracking in the heat, should have left me a broken thing. Instead, my body felt reborn. I looked down at my arms, turning them over in wonder. The ropes had left no marks. The flames had left no scars. My skin was luminous, almost translucent, with veins that seemed to carry liquid sunlight instead of blood. "What am I?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. "You are what you've always been," the voice inside me responded, no longer separate but woven into every thought. "You are the eternal flame. You are the phoenix, and you are finally awake." I pushed myself to my feet, and the ground beneath me erupted in wildflowers, bright orange poppies and golden marigolds that shouldn't bloom this late in the season. With each step, the forest responded. Trees leaned toward me as if in reverence. Birds fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then I felt it the second heartbeat, stronger now, insistent. My hand flew to my belly, and I gasped. The slight swell I'd been hiding for weeks under loose gowns was still there, but now it radiated warmth against my palm. The child inside me wasn't just alive. It was thriving, pulsing with the same divine energy that now coursed through my veins. "You survived," I breathed, tears streaming down my face, tears that evaporated into steam before they could fall. "We both survived." "Not survived," the voice corrected. "Transcended. This child is no longer merely mortal. The flames that should have destroyed you instead forged something new. The first solar wolf. A being born of divine fire and alpha blood." I sank to my knees, overwhelmed. My son and I knew with certainty it was a son would be the bridge between the mortal and divine. He would carry both Alaric's alpha heritage and my phoenix essence. The prophecy I'd dismissed as legend suddenly made terrible, beautiful sense. When the sun takes wolf form, the age of shadows will end. But that also meant Alaric would hunt us. If he discovered his heir lived, carried by the wife he'd tried to murder, he would stop at nothing to either control or destroy us both. I won't let him touch you, I promised, my voice echoing through the elder forest with a resonance that shook leaves from branches. I'll burn this entire kingdom to ash before I let him lay one hand on you. Careful, the phoenix warned, though I heard amusement in its tone. Your rage is powerful, but unfocused fire destroys everything, including what you love. You must learn control. Control? I laughed bitterly, flames flickering at my fingertips. They murdered me, stole my crown, and would have killed my child. You want me to show control? I want you to show wisdom. The voice grew stern. Alaric thinks you dead. Let him continue to believe it. While he celebrates his freedom, his kingdom will begin to crumble not by your hand, but by his own corruption. The oath his ancestors swore was bound to the land itself. Without a true Luna, without honor at its heart, Hillview will wither, and when it does, when he is desperate and weak, then we strike. I closed my eyes and felt the truth of those words settle into my bones. Revenge wasn't just about burning Alaric alive, though the thought brought me savage satisfaction. True justice meant exposing him for what he was, a betrayer, an oath-breaker, a false king who'd traded his kingdom's soul for ambition. A rustling in the underbrush made me spin, flames erupting in my palms instinctively. A massive silver wolf emerged from the shadows, but instead of attacking, it lowered its head in submission. Then another appeared, and another. Within moments, I was surrounded by a pack of wild forest wolves, all bowing before me. They recognize what you are, the phoenix explained. All creatures of instinct can sense divinity. These wolves will protect you, hide you, sustain you. Accept their oath. The largest wolf, a scarred male with eyes like molten amber, approached and pressed his muzzle to my hand. I felt the bond snap into place, ancient and unbreakable. He would be my guardian, my eyes and ears in the mortal world. "What's your name?" I asked, though I didn't expect an answer. Ember, the name appeared in my mind, not in words but in images. Fire reflected in wolf eyes, sparks rising from a battlefield, the last ember of a dying flame refusing to go out. "Ember," I repeated, and he huffed in acknowledgement. "Then you'll help me protect my son. Help me prepare for what's coming." The wolf pack circled around me, creating a living barrier. I felt their loyalty settle over me like armor, and for the first time since waking, I allowed myself to breathe deeply. The sacred elder forest had stood for millennia, untouched by human or wolf politics. Its heart was a volcanic spring, steam rising from water heated by the earth's core. Ember led me there, and I knew instinctively this would be my sanctuary. I knelt at the water's edge and saw my reflection for the first time since the transformation. My face was still my own high cheekbones, the scar above my left eyebrow from childhood, lips that Alaric once claimed were made for kissing, but my eyes had changed. They were no longer the soft brown of a gentle Luna. They burned with inner fire, orange and gold, swirling like flames trapped in amber. "He wouldn't recognize me now," I said, touching my reflection and watching ripples distort my face. Not the timid wife he married. Not the weak Luna he discarded. "Good," the phoenix approved. "Let him remember you as a victim. It will make his shock so much sweeter when you return as a goddess." I cupped water in my hands, water that should have scalded but felt merely warm, and drank deeply. Strength flooded through me, not the physical strength of muscle and bone, but something far more profound. I was connected now to the very essence of life. Fire, earth, water, air, All elements bowed to the phoenix. Standing, I spread my arms wide and felt power gather. Heat built in my chest, expanding outward until flames erupted from my shoulder blades. Not the destructive fire of the pyre, but creative flames, wings of pure solar energy that stretched 15 feet on each side, casting golden light across the entire clearing. The forest wolves howled in recognition and reverence. I was no longer Lena, the dutiful Luna of Hillview Kingdom. I was the phoenix goddess, mother of the solar wolf, and I would bide my time in this sanctuary. Let Alaric crown his mistress. Let him feast and celebrate and believe himself victorious. Because every empire built on betrayal carried the seeds of its own destruction. And I would be there to fan those seeds into an inferno. My son kicked against my hand, as if in agreement, and I smiled an expression that would have terrified anyone who saw it. "Soon, little one," I whispered, my wings folding back into my body like a secret waiting to be revealed. "Soon we'll show them all what happens when you try to cage the sun." Chapter 2. The Dying Land. 3 weeks after he'd burned me alive, Alaric stood in the royal granary and couldn't understand why he felt cold dread instead of triumph. I know this because Ember showed me. Through his eyes, I watched my husband, former husband, I corrected myself bitterly, stare at rows of wheat that should have been golden but were spotted with black rot. The harvest master wrung his hands, his face pale with fear that had nothing to do with disappointing his king. "The crops started dying the day after the Luna's execution, Your Majesty," the old wolf stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "At first it was just the western fields, but now it's spreading to every corner of the kingdom. The livestock won't eat the hay, the fruit trees are dropping their blossoms. Even the fish in the rivers are floating belly up." Alaric's jaw clenched, the muscle twitching the way it always did when he was cornered. I'd seen that look countless times during our marriage, when the council questioned his war plans, when his mother criticized his hunting skills, when I dared to suggest mercy for captured enemies. "It's just a bad season," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We've had droughts before." "This isn't a drought, sire." The harvest master's voice dropped even lower, as if speaking heresy. "The wells are full, the rain still falls, but the land itself is rejecting the water. It's as if the earth has turned its back on Hillview." From my sanctuary in the elder forest, I felt a savage satisfaction bloom in my chest like one of those fire poppies that marked my footsteps. The land was responding exactly as the phoenix had predicted. The oath Theron the Brave had sworn 3 centuries ago wasn't just words, it was a binding contract written into the soil itself. Break the oath, betray the sacred bond of Luna and Alpha, treat life as worthless, and the kingdom would wither. "Have the healers examined the soil?" Alaric demanded, turning away from the rotting grain. "They have, Your Majesty. They say it's cursed." The word hung in the air like an accusation. I watched through Ember's eyes as Alaric's hand moved unconsciously to his chest, where I knew he still wore the mate bond scar, the silver mark that should have faded when I died but instead had turned black, spreading like poison across his skin. He thought no one knew about it, but I'd seen him rubbing at it during council meetings, trying to ease an ache that no healer could touch. That was my curse, working its way through his very flesh. "Get out," Alaric said quietly. When the harvest master didn't move fast enough, he roared, "I said get out." The old wolf fled, and I felt Ember retreat to the shadows, maintaining his observation. Alaric was alone now, and for a brief moment, I saw something that almost resembled regret flicker across his face. His hand went to the place where I used to rest my head on his shoulder, as if reaching for a ghost. "Don't," I whispered from miles away, my voice sharp with fury. "Don't you dare mourn me now." Then the throne room doors burst open, and Ilara swept in with her father, Lord Cassius, in tow. My replacement wore a gown I recognized, sapphire blue silk embroidered with silver wolves. I had made it for our 5-year anniversary, back when I still believed love could survive ambition. Seeing her wear it was like being burned all over again. My king, Alara purred, though I could hear the edge of panic beneath the sweetness. The people are getting restless. They're saying the Luna's death has angered the gods. The people are superstitious fools, Alaric snapped, but he didn't meet her eyes. Lord Cassius stepped forward, his calculating gaze sweeping over the Alpha King. He was a weasel of a man, more merchant than warrior, who'd bought his lordship through strategic marriages and carefully timed bribes. I'd never trusted him, and now I watched through Ember's vision as he played his hand. With respect, Your Majesty, the people may be onto something. He pulled a scroll from his robes, ancient, yellowed with age. I've been researching our kingdom's founding, and I've discovered something troubling. Alaric snatched the scroll, his eyes scanning the text. I couldn't see the words, but I didn't need to. I knew what it said because the Phoenix had shown me the original oath in my visions. If my descendants betray the people, if they treat the sacred Luna bond as disposable, if they choose ambition over honor, then let the land itself become their judge and executioner. This is a myth, Alaric said, but his hand trembled slightly as he rolled the scroll closed. Is it? Lord Cassius gestured to the windows, where the view showed fields that should have been lush with late summer growth but instead looked like autumn had come months early, everything brown and dying. The harvest will fail completely within a month. By winter, we'll have nothing to feed the people. The Alpha soldiers are already reporting weakness. Some can't even shift anymore. That last detail made my heart sing with vicious joy. The Alpha spark, the divine gift that made Hillview's warriors legendary, was fading because its source, the Phoenix's blessing, had been withdrawn. Without it, they were just ordinary wolves. Strong, yes, but not invincible. Alaric's face had gone pale. What are you suggesting? The same thing our ancestors did when they faced divine displeasure. Lord Cassius's voice was smooth as poisoned honey. A sacrifice, a grand one, not just one life, but many. Prove to the gods that Hillview still honors the old ways. Human sacrifice was outlawed centuries ago, Alaric said, but even I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Then make it wolves who volunteered, Elara interjected, her eyes bright with cruel calculation. The elderly, the sick, those without families. Tell them it's an honor to give their lives for the kingdom. We'll call it the Phoenix's price and make it a ceremony. You want to murder our own people to fix crops? Alaric's voice rose, and for one insane moment, I thought I saw a flash of the man I'd once loved, the prince who'd sworn to protect the weak. But Lord Cassius was already shaking his head. Not murder, Your Majesty. Sacred duty. And if you won't do it, then the people will start asking why. They'll start asking about the old Luna. They'll start asking if maybe her death was the cause of all this misfortune. The threat was clear. Cooperate or be blamed. I watched Alaric's face cycle through emotions, anger, fear, calculation, resignation. In the end, ambition won. It always did with him. How many? He asked quietly. 12 to start, Lord Cassius said, pulling out another scroll. This one covered in names. I've already compiled a list of... I'll review it. Alaric cut him off, taking the scroll. His hands shook slightly, and the black mark on his chest pulsed visibly through his shirt, a heartbeat of guilt. But this stays between us. If word gets out that we're considering this, the people will hear only that their king is taking decisive action to save them, Alara assured him, sliding her arm through his. They'll see you as strong, willing to make hard choices. Through Ember's eyes, I saw the exact moment Alaric's last shred of humanity died, his shoulders squared, his jaw set, The trembling stopped. "Prepare the ritual for the next new moon," he commanded. "Lord Cassius, you'll oversee the selection. Make it quick and clean. I don't want suffering." "How merciful," I breathed sarcastically from my volcanic spring, my hands curling into fists that ignited with flames. "But sire," Alara said carefully, "there's another matter. Your coronation as sole Alpha King without a Luna requires the blessing of the High Council. They've been reluctant to schedule it." "Why?" Alaric's voice turned dangerous. "They claim a king cannot rule without a Luna, that the balance must be maintained. They're using ancient laws to—" "Then we'll give them a Luna." Alaric turned to Alara, and even through Ember's vision, I could see the cold calculation in his eyes. There was no love there, only strategy. "We'll move up our wedding 3 days from now, before the next council meeting." Alara's face lit up with greedy triumph, and I wanted to tear her apart with my bare hands. "As for the blessing," Alaric continued, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he used in battle, "tell the council that Lady Alara bears the mark of the phoenix, that she's the goddess's chosen vessel. They'll have to accept her then." "But I don't bear any mark," Alara started. "You will by morning." Lord Cassius smiled, pulling a small vial from his robes. "Phoenix root extract mixed with cinnabar powder, painted on her back in the shape of wings. In candlelight, it'll glow convincingly enough." They were going to fake divine blessing. They were going to pretend Alara was touched by the phoenix. They were going to sacrifice innocent wolves and parade a false Luna before my people, all while my kingdom died around them. "Let them," the phoenix whispered inside me, though her voice simmered with rage that matched my own. "Let them dig their graves deeper. Every lie they tell, every innocent they harm, every day they rule, it all becomes evidence of their corruption. When you return, no one will question your justice." But watching through Ember's eyes as they made their plans, as they measured my people's lives in tactical advantages, as they prepared to crown a false goddess in my place, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart. That had already broken. No, this was something far more dangerous. The last chain of mercy that had held my rage in check. "Ember," I called softly, and felt his consciousness turn toward mine across the miles. "Find me 12 volunteers. Wolves from the forest packs, those with nothing to lose. I want them in Hillview before the new moon." "What are you planning?" the phoenix asked, though I sensed approval beneath the question. "If Alaric wants to play with fire," I said, my eyes blazing so bright that the volcanic spring began to boil around me, "then I'll show him what happens when fire plays back." My son kicked against my palm, and I smiled. The dying land was just the beginning. Chapter 3. The Birth of the Solar Wolf. The contractions started at dawn, 3 months after my transformation, and they felt like the earth itself was splitting apart inside me. I'd been tracking the pregnancy with a mix of wonder and terror, watching my belly swell far faster than any normal wolf gestation. The phoenix had warned me that carrying a divine child would compress the timeline. What should have taken 9 months would take barely 4. My son was being forged in celestial fire, and fire did not wait patiently. Ember sensed it first. He'd been lying at the entrance to my sanctuary when he suddenly leapt to his feet, hackles raised, a low whine escaping his throat. The other forest wolves began to howl in unison, a mournful chorus that echoed through the elder forest like a warning siren. "I know," I gasped, doubling over as another wave of pain crashed through me. This wasn't the gentle discomfort I'd heard other mothers describe. This was agony that burned from the inside out, as if my son was trying to claw his way into the world through my very bones. "The volcanic cave," the phoenix commanded, her voice urgent. "You cannot birth him here. He needs to be born where fire meets earth, where the primal elements converge. Go now, before the transformation begins." Transformation? I managed to ask, even as Ember pressed against my side, offering support. A solar wolf is not born the same way as mortal children, she explained, and I heard something almost like sympathy in her ancient voice. He will emerge in flames. If you're not in the right place, you'll burn the entire forest down. That was enough to get me moving despite the pain. I clutched Ember's fur and let him guide me deeper into the forest, to the volcanic cave I'd only glimpsed once before, a cavern where molten rock flowed in rivers beneath crystalline stone, where steam rose in columns that looked like prayers made visible. The heat should have been unbearable, but to me it felt like coming home. I collapsed on the smooth black stone at the cave's heart, my body convulsing with contractions that came faster now, relentless as a war drum. Through the haze of pain, I could feel my son's consciousness pressing against mine, not words, but emotions, eagerness, power, an overwhelming need to break free. "I know, little one," I whispered, my voice echoing off the cave walls. "I know you're ready." The phoenix power surged through me unbidden, and I felt my wings erupt from my shoulder blades, not the controlled manifestation I'd learned to summon, but a wild, instinctive response to the crisis. Flames engulfed my body, but they didn't burn. They cradled me, supported me, poured strength into my exhausted muscles. Outside the cave, I heard thunder. The sky, which had been clear moments ago, suddenly roared with storm clouds that seemed to appear from nowhere. Rain began to fall on the elder forest, not the gentle spring showers, but a deluge that made the ancient trees bow under its weight. But beyond the forest's borders, not a single drop fell. I could sense it through my connection to the land, could feel Hillview Kingdom baking under a pitiless sun while my sanctuary drowned in blessed rain. The dichotomy was deliberate, a message from the divine forces that watched over this birth. Blessings for the faithful, drought for the betrayers. Another contraction seized me, and this time I did scream. Fire erupted from my hands, scorching the cave walls, melting stone into glass. Ember had wisely retreated to the entrance, but I could feel his worried presence, his loyalty like an anchor keeping me tethered to consciousness. "Phoenix," I gasped. "I can't, it's too much." "You can," she insisted, her voice filling my entire being. "You are the vessel of eternity. You have died and been reborn. You have survived betrayal and transformation. You can birth the future." The pain reached a crescendo that made my previous suffering seem like a gentle warmth. I felt something fundamental shift inside me, felt my son's power reaching critical mass. He was ready. The solar wolf was ready to enter the world. I pushed with everything I had: mortal strength, divine power, desperate maternal love, and felt him move. Flames erupted around me in a column that shot straight up through the cave's opening, piercing the sky like a beacon visible for hundreds of miles. The volcanic rivers below surged, bubbling and frothing, as if the earth itself was celebrating. And then, in a rush of fire and fluid and impossible light, my son was born. He didn't cry immediately. For one terrible heartbeat, there was only silence, and I thought something had gone wrong. But then he opened his eyes, eyes that burned with the same solar fire as mine, and released a sound that was part infant's wail, part wolf's howl, part phoenix's shriek. The cave shook. The volcanic rivers overflowed their banks, and outside, the rain that had been falling on the forest intensified into a storm that would soak the elder forest for 3 days straight. But in Hillview Kingdom, the wells began to dry up completely. I gathered my son to my chest with trembling hands, and the flames that covered both of us merged, dancing between mother and child like a living bond. He was perfect small but impossibly strong, his skin bearing a faint golden sheen, tiny fingers that already showed the beginning of claws far sharper than any normal wolf pup's. "Hello, my solar wolf," I whispered, tears streaming down my face and evaporating into steam. I'm your mother, and I promise you, no one will ever hurt you the way your father hurt me." He latched onto my breast immediately, feeding with a hunger that felt almost aggressive. I could feel the divine energy flowing from me to him, strengthening him, preparing him for the destiny the phoenix had chosen for him. "He will be called Solarius," the phoenix announced, her voice resonating through the cave. "The first of his kind, the bridge between mortal and divine, the wolf who will end the age of shadows." "Solarius," I repeated, testing the name. It felt right, powerful, inevitable. Sol, for short, when it's just us. The baby, no. I couldn't think of him as just a baby. Not when he radiated this much power, made a sound that might have been agreement. His tiny hand reached up and touched my face, and where his fingers brushed my skin, I felt a jolt of recognition. He knew me. Not just as his mother, but as his divine guardian, his protector, his partner in the vengeance to come. Ember finally dared to approach, his massive head lowering to sniff the newborn. Sol turned to look at him, and I watched in amazement as my son's eyes flashed just for a moment with pure solar fire. Ember immediately dropped to his belly in submission, recognizing an alpha power that surpassed anything in the mortal world. "He's going to be magnificent," I said, my voice thick with emotions I couldn't even name. Pride, fear, love, rage, all of it swirling together like the flames that still danced around us. "He is already magnificent," the phoenix corrected. "But he will need years to grow into his power. You must protect him until then. Keep him hidden from Alaric until the time is right." I thought of Alaric in his palace, probably celebrating his sham wedding to Alara right now, completely unaware that his true heir had just been born in fire and fury. The irony was delicious. "Let him enjoy his false victory," I murmured, stroking Sol's downy hair that seemed to shift between black and gold depending on how the light hit it. "When the time comes, when Sol is ready, we'll show Hillview what a real alpha looks like." Sol's eyes began to drift closed, exhausted from the effort of being born. I held him close, my wings folding around us, both like a cocoon, and felt peace for the first time since the pyre. Outside, the rain continued to fall on the elder forest, nurturing the trees, filling the streams, making everything green and lush and alive. But beyond the forest's borders, Hillview Kingdom withered under cloudless skies, the land cracking and dying because it had been built on betrayal. The drought would last exactly as long as Alaric's false reign. And when my son was ready, when Solarius the solar wolf had grown into his power, we would return together. Not as victims, but as judgment made flesh. Chapter 4. The Silent Return. 6 weeks after Sol's birth, I left him sleeping in Ember's watchful care and walked into Hillview's capital disguised as everything I'd once been told I could never be. Unremarkable. The transformation was simple enough. I dampened my divine aura until it was barely a flicker, braided my hair into the style common among traveling healers, and wore the plain brown robes of a hedge witch. The phoenix power still burned beneath my skin, but I'd learned to contain it, to make it invisible to all but the most sensitive observers. To anyone looking, I was just another desperate soul-seeking work in a dying kingdom. What I saw as I passed through the city gates broke something inside me that even betrayal hadn't touched. Hillview had been beautiful once. I remembered streets lined with flowering trees, markets overflowing with produce, children laughing as they chased each other through fountains. The city had thrummed with life, with prosperity, with the kind of contentment that came from knowing your leaders cared about your well-being. Now, it looked like a corpse that hadn't realized it was dead yet. The flowering trees were skeletal, their branches bare and brittle. The markets had maybe a dozen stalls, and those sold only withered vegetables at prices that made the buyers weep. Children sat listlessly in the shadows, their ribs visible through tattered clothing, their eyes hollow with hunger. And everywhere I saw the black marks. They were painted on doors, on foreheads, on the chests of people who moved through the streets like the walking dead. At first, I didn't understand what they meant. Then I overheard two women whispering as they hurried past a marked house. "That's the third one on this street," one said, her voice shaking. "The selection is tonight." "Poor souls," the other replied, "but better them than us, right? At least they're serving the kingdom." The selection. Lord Cassius's sacrifice list. I followed the marked people with my eyes and felt rage ignite in my chest like a furnace being stoked. These weren't the elderly and sick Elara had mentioned. I saw young mothers with babes in arms, craftsmen in their prime, even a few children, marked and silent, holding their parents' hands as they walked toward whatever dark ceremony awaited them. "Excuse me," I said, approaching an old woman who sat on the steps of what had once been a prosperous bakery. "What are those marks for?" She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "You're not from here, are you, healer?" "I'm from the eastern villages," I lied smoothly. "I heard the capital needed healers." "We need food more than healers," she said bitterly. "But to answer your question, those marks mean the Phoenix has chosen them. That's what the new Luna says anyway. Says the goddess demands sacrifice to end the drought, and those marked should feel honored to give their lives for Hillview." My hands clenched in my robes, flames threatening to erupt from my fingertips. I forced them down. "And people believe this? What choice do we have?" The old woman's voice broke. "We're starving. The crops are dead. The wells are dry. If the Luna says sacrifice will save us, who are we to argue? She bears the mark of the Phoenix herself. She glows with holy light. Cinnabar powder and phoenix root extract. I remembered Lord Cassius's words about faking divine blessing, and felt sick. "Where is this ceremony happening?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "The Temple Square, at moonrise. But don't try to interfere, healer. The Queen's Guard will arrest anyone who speaks against the selection." She paused, then added quietly, "Even if we all know it's wrong." I thanked her and moved deeper into the city, following the main road toward the Temple District. The palace loomed on the hill above, and I could see construction. They were building something massive on the western terrace. Probably a monument to Alaric and Alara's great love, I thought acidly. That's when I heard the crying. It came from an alley between two abandoned shops, high-pitched and terrified. I turned toward the sound and found 5 children huddled against a wall while 3 soldiers in the Queen's colors advanced on them with drawn swords. "Please," a girl who couldn't have been more than 12 pleaded, spreading her arms to shield the younger children behind her. "We haven't done anything wrong. We're just hungry." "You stole bread from the Queen's personal stores," the lead soldier said, though his voice lacked conviction. He was young, maybe 20, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "That's treason." "It was moldy bread you'd thrown out," the girl cried. "We took it from the waste bins." "Doesn't matter." Another soldier, older and colder, grabbed the girl's arm roughly. "Queen Alara says all theft is punished by death. Sets an example for the others." He raised his sword, and I saw his intention clear as day. He was going to kill children to prove his loyalty. I moved before conscious thought took over. "Stop," I said quietly, stepping into the alley. My healer's robes billowed slightly in a wind that shouldn't exist in the narrow space. The soldiers turned, and the older one sneered. "Walk away, witch! This doesn't concern you." "It concerns anyone with a conscience," I replied, moving to stand between the soldiers and the children. "These are orphans, starving and desperate. They took spoiled bread from the trash. That's survival, not treason." "The Queen makes the laws," the young soldier said, but he'd lowered his sword slightly. "We're just following orders." "The Queen," I said, letting a tiny fraction of heat leak into my voice, "is a fraud wearing stolen robes and false light, and you know it." The temperature in the alley suddenly spiked 20 degrees. The soldiers stepped back, sweat breaking out on their foreheads. They couldn't see my eyes glowing beneath the shadow of my hood, but they felt the power radiating from me like heat from a forge. "What are you?" the older soldier whispered, his sword wavering. "I'm someone who's very tired of watching innocent people suffer for the ambitions of cowards." I raised my hand, and flames danced along my fingertips just for a moment. Just enough to make my point. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to forget you saw these children. You're going to go back to your barracks and tell your commander that the thieves escaped into the sewers. And if I ever hear of you threatening orphans again, I will find you. Do you understand?" The young soldier nodded frantically and backed away. The older one looked like he wanted to argue, wanted to assert his authority, but then his eyes met mine, really met them, seeing past the human disguise to the divine fury beneath, and all the fight drained out of him. "Yes, ma'am," he mumbled, then turned and fled with his companions. I waited until their footsteps faded before turning to the children. The girl was staring at me with wide eyes, and I realized my hood had fallen back slightly, revealing the telltale golden sheen of my skin. "You're the old Luna," she breathed. "Everyone said you died in the fire." "I did," I said softly, kneeling to her level, "but I got better." One of the younger children, a boy of maybe 6, suddenly threw his arms around my neck. "I remember you," he sobbed. "You used to give us honey cakes on festival days. You told us stories. You were kind." My throat tightened with emotion I couldn't afford right now. "What are your names?" "I'm Mira," the girl said. "This is Fen, Cassia, Thorn, and Little Ash." She gestured to each child in turn. "We lived in the Eastern District Orphanage until it closed. No money for food," they said. "Now we're just trying to survive." I looked at these 5 children, all marked with the same hollow hunger I'd seen throughout the city, and made a decision that probably wasn't strategic, wasn't careful, but felt absolutely necessary. "Come with me," I said, standing and offering my hand. "Where?" Mira asked warily. Smart girl, not trusting too easily even after I'd saved them. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere with food and water and people who won't hunt you for stealing garbage." I pulled my hood back fully, letting them see my face clearly. "I can't save everyone yet, but I can save you 5, if you trust me." The children looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that people who've survived together can have. Finally, Mira nodded. "We trust you, Luna," she said firmly. "We always did." I led them out of the capital through the southern gate, using subtle applications of fire to cloud the guard's vision, to make us seem like harmless travelers instead of a fugitive goddess with 5 stolen orphans. Once we were beyond the city walls, I let my pace quicken, knowing we needed to reach the Elder Forest before moonrise. "Is it true?" Little Ash asked as we walked, his hand firmly gripping mine, "that you came back from the dead?" "Yes," I said simply. "Are you going to punish the bad king and queen?" Fen asked, his young voice hard with anger. "Eventually," I promised. "But first, I need to make sure people like you are safe. Because that's what real Lunas do, they protect their people, especially the ones who can't protect themselves." When we finally reached the sanctuary, and Sol woke from his nap, giving his distinctive half-cry, half-howl greeting, the children stared in awe at my infant son with his golden-streaked hair and eyes that burned like miniature suns. "He's beautiful," Mira whispered. "He's our future," I corrected. "All of yours. And when he's ready, we'll take back the kingdom together, not just for revenge, but to build something better. Something that actually protects orphans instead of marking them for death." Ember approached and sniffed each child carefully before giving his approval, his tail wagging slightly. The children would be safe here, fed by the forest's bounty, protected by wolves who answered to something greater than mortal law. I'd come to the capital to observe, to understand the depth of Alaric's corruption. Instead, I'd saved 5 lives and given myself 5 more reasons to ensure my return wasn't just dramatic, it was permanent. Chapter 5. The Coronation of Shadows. The Coronation of Shadows, that's what they called it, though they meant it as a compliment, a reference to Alara's supposed divine darkness that would balance Alaric's light. I called it that for different reasons entirely. I stood in the crowd wearing my healer's disguise, soul strapped to my chest beneath my cloak where his warmth pressed against my heart like a second pulse. He was 3 months old now, growing impossibly fast, already able to hold his head up and track movement with those burning golden eyes. Ember and the forest wolves ringed the crowd's perimeter, invisible to everyone but me, waiting for my signal. The temple square had been transformed into something grotesque. Black and silver banners hung from every surface, decorated with a bastardized version of the phoenix symbol wings pointing downward instead of up, flames rendered in cold silver instead of warm gold. It was everything the phoenix wasn't. Dark, lifeless, backwards. Thousands had gathered, though whether from genuine celebration or morbid curiosity, I couldn't tell. The people looked hollowed out, their faces gaunt from months of drought and starvation. The sacrifices had done nothing to end the suffering. In fact, things had gotten worse. But here they were anyway, desperate for any shred of hope that their new Luna might somehow fix what their king had broken. Alaric sat on a throne that had been dragged out from the palace, looking every inch the conqueror. He'd gained weight while his people starved, I noticed with disgust. His ceremonial armor was polished to a mirror shine, and he wore a crown of black iron twisted into wolf heads. The mate bond scar was visible above his collar, black veins spreading up his neck like poison ivy. It was killing him slowly. Good. Alara processed down the center aisle wearing white. The audacity of it made me want to laugh. White, the color of purity and new beginnings, on a woman who'd helped murder her predecessor. Her back was bare, and I could see the fake phoenix mark Lord Cassius had painted there, glowing faintly with bioluminescent powder. It would have been convincing if you'd never seen the real thing. I had. I was the real thing. People of Hillview, Alaric's voice rang out, amplified by the acoustics of the square. Today we crown a Luna worthy of leading us into a new age. An age of strength, of conquest, of glory that will make the old ways seem quaint and weak. The crowd's response was muted. These people didn't want conquest. They wanted food, water, their children to stop dying of hunger. Lady Alara bears the mark of the phoenix, Alaric continued, gesturing to her glowing back. The goddess herself has chosen her to stand beside me. Together, we will restore Hillview to greatness. That was my cue. I let the disguise drop like a cloak falling from my shoulders. The plain brown robes ignited, burning away to reveal the dress I'd woven from fire itself, red and gold flames that moved like living silk, never consuming, always dancing. My wings erupted from my back, 15 feet of solar fire that cast the entire square in golden light so bright that people had to shield their eyes. Saul, sensing the moment, released his distinctive cry, that perfect blend of infant, wolf, and phoenix that made every head turn toward us. The crowd gasped and stumbled backward, creating a circle of empty space around me. I walked forward calmly, my wings spread wide, my son held proudly against my chest where everyone could see his golden-streaked hair and burning eyes. "You want to see the phoenix's chosen?" My voice carried across the square without me needing to shout, resonant with divine authority. "Then look at me." Alaric shot to his feet, his face cycling through shock, horror, and rage in rapid succession. "You're dead. I watched you burn. You watched me ascend." I reached the dais and stared up at him, letting him see what I'd become. "Did you really think fire could kill the phoenix goddess? I am the flame, Alaric." I've died and been reborn more times than your pathetic bloodline has drawn breath. Alara had gone pale, her fake mark looking garish and cheap next to my genuine radiance. This is a trick, some kind of illusion. Is it? I turned to the crowd, letting them see Sol's face clearly. This is your true heir, Solarius, the solar wolf, born of divine fire and alpha blood. Born 3 months ago in the heart of the elder forest while you crowned a pretender and let innocent people die. A woman in the crowd cried out, "The old Luna! She's alive!" "The phoenix has returned!" someone else shouted. Alaric recovered quickly, his tactical mind already working. "Guards! Seize that woman! She's a dark witch who's stolen my wife's face." 20 soldiers moved toward me, but before they could get close, Ember and his pack emerged from the crowd's edges. Massive forest wolves, twice the size of normal specimens, formed a protective barrier around me. Their eyes glowed with reflected firelight, and their growls made the soldiers stop dead in their tracks. "Your wife." I laughed, and it sounded like crackling flames. "I stopped being your wife the moment you chose ambition over honor. The moment you broke the sacred oath your ancestors swore to me 300 years ago." That got everyone's attention. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. "You're insane," Alaric said, but I saw the fear in his eyes. He knew. On some level, he'd always known what he'd done would have consequences. "Am I?" I raised my free hand, and the black mark on his chest flared bright enough to be visible through his armor. He cried out in pain, clutching at it. "That's my curse, husband. That's what happens when you burn the phoenix. It burns you back, from the inside out, forever." I turned back to the people, speaking directly to them now. Theron the Brave made an oath to the phoenix 3 centuries ago. In exchange for the alpha spark, for the strength that made Hillview great, he promised to protect the weak, honor the mate bond, and rule with justice. That oath was binding. Break it, and the land itself would reject you. "She's lying!" Alara shrieked. "Don't listen to her!" "Then explain the drought." I gestured to the withered decorations, the gaunt faces. "Explain why your crops died the day after my execution. Explain why your alpha soldiers can barely shift anymore. Explain why the only place in the entire kingdom that has water and life is the elder forest where I've been living." Silence fell. People were looking at each other, pieces clicking into place, the truth settling over them like a heavy blanket. "The sacrifices," an old man called out. "You said the sacrifices would end the drought." "The sacrifices were murder dressed in ritual," I said flatly. "You killed your own people for nothing, because your king was too proud to admit he'd brought this curse on himself." Alaric's hand went to his sword. "I am your Alpha King. You will not. You are nothing." My voice cracked like thunder, and Sol shrieked in harmony with me. "You are an oath-breaker who murdered his Luna to make room for his ambition. You fed your people lies while they starved. You sacrificed innocence to cover your crimes. You are nothing." I ascended the dais, my wings spreading wider, flames intensifying until the entire square glowed like sunrise. Alaric backed away, but there was nowhere to go. Alara had already fled, her white dress trailing behind her like a surrender flag. "The people deserve to choose," I announced, addressing the crowd rather than him. "Who do you want? A false king who brought drought and death? Or the true Luna, blessed by the phoenix, mother of the solar wolf, who can restore what was broken?" "The Luna!" someone shouted. Then another. Then dozens, hundreds, all of them chanting together. "The Luna! The Luna! The Luna!" The soldiers looked at each other. Then slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons and knelt. Alaric stood alone on the dais, abandoned by his guards, his queen, his people. The black mark on his chest was spreading faster now, creeping toward his heart like inevitable justice. "This isn't over," he snarled, but his voice shook. "Oh, my love," I said softly, and there was nothing but ashes left of the affection that word once carried. "It's already over. You just haven't realized you're dead yet." Chapter 6. The Phoenix's Justice. Alaric tried to run, which was almost funny considering he'd spent our entire marriage telling me that running was for cowards and prey. But when faced with divine judgment, even an alpha king discovered he had limits. He didn't make it far. Ember intercepted him at the dais steps, teeth bared, blocking his escape. The other wolves closed in, forming an inescapable circle. The crowd parted like water, no one willing to help the man who'd let them starve while he feasted. "Guards!" Alaric shouted desperately. "Someone! I command you!" "You command nothing," I said, descending the steps with soul still pressed to my chest. My son watched everything with those ancient, knowing eyes, and I wondered what memories the Phoenix was showing him, what lessons about power and consequence. "You have no authority here. You lost it the moment you chose to destroy rather than protect." I stopped 3 feet from him, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead, the way his hands trembled despite his attempt to project strength. The black mark had spread across his entire chest now, pulsing with each labored heartbeat. It looked like a grotesque tree, roots digging into his heart, branches crawling toward his throat. "What are you going to do?" he asked, trying to sound brave but failing. "Kill me in front of all these people? That makes you no better than me." "I'm not going to kill you." I smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "Death would be mercy, and you don't deserve mercy. You deserve to live with what you've done, to feel every consequence, to experience what it's like to be powerless in a world where you once had everything." I raised my hand, placing it directly over the black mark on his chest. He tried to jerk away, but Ember growled low and threatening, keeping him frozen in place. "The alpha spark," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "was a gift from the Phoenix, given to Theron the Brave in exchange for an oath. That oath has been broken." I looked into Alaric's eyes, seeing his growing horror as he realized what I intended. "So I'm taking the gift back." "No," he whispered. "You can't. Without it, I'm just mortal," I nodded. "Ordinary, human, everything you feared being." I pressed my palm flat against his chest and pulled. It wasn't a physical pulling, nothing anyone watching could see with normal eyes, but everyone felt it a shift in the air, a collective gasp as power moved from one vessel to another. The alpha spark looked like liquid gold fire when I extracted it. All of Alaric's supernatural strength and dominance condensed into pure essence. He screamed. Not in pain, I wasn't cruel enough to make it hurt, but in existential terror as he felt his identity being stripped away. The spark that had defined him since puberty, that had made him alpha, that had convinced him he was destined for greatness, all of it flowing out of him and into my keeping. When I stepped back, clutching the golden light in my fist, Alaric collapsed to his knees. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, as if his very bones had shrunk. The black mark remained on his chest, but it had stopped spreading without the alpha spark to feed on. It was just a scar now, a permanent reminder of his betrayal. "I can't feel it," he said hoarsely, his hands clawing at his chest. "I can't feel my wolf. I can't feel anything." "That's what mortality feels like," I told him. "What every one of your subjects feels every day. The vulnerability, the weakness, the knowledge that you're not special, not chosen, not destined for anything except what you make of yourself through your own choices and character." I turned away from him, addressing the crowd that watched in stunned silence. "This is your king," I announced, gesturing at the broken man behind me. "A mortal who was given divine power and squandered it on ambition. Who murdered his Luna and let innocents die to cover his crimes? Do you still want him on your throne?" "No!" The roar was deafening, unified, absolute. Then he will face mortal justice. I looked at the captain of the guard who still knelt with his soldiers. Take him to the dungeons. He will stand trial before the people he harmed. And he will live with the consequences, however long that may be. As the guards hauled Alaric away and he couldn't resist without his alpha strength, I felt soul shift against my chest. He reached up with one tiny hand and touched the golden spark I still held, and I felt the phoenix's approval wash through me. Now comes the hard part, she whispered. Destruction is easy. Creation requires true power. She was right. Anyone could tear down a corrupt system, building something better, healing what was broken that took work. I walked to the center of the square, where a fountain had long since gone dry, its basin cracked and filled with dead leaves. I knelt beside it, placed Saul gently on the ground where the wolves could guard him, and pressed both hands to the earth. The land is sick because trust was broken, I said, speaking to the crowd but also to the kingdom itself, to the soil and stone and water that had rejected Alaric's rule. But I am here now. I am the phoenix, the eternal flame. And I will restore what was lost not through destruction, but through transformation. I released the alpha spark, but not back to Alaric. Instead, I let it sink into the earth itself, diffusing through the soil like water through sand. Then I added my own power, controlled, purposeful, the fire that sustains rather than consumes. Heat spread outward from my hands in waves, but it was gentle warmth, the kind that coaxed seeds to sprout and roots to dig deep. The cracked fountain basin began to glow, and I heard gasps as water clear, cold, blessed water began to bubble up from beneath the stone. The drought is over, I announced, standing as the fountain overflowed, water spilling into channels that would carry it throughout the city. But the renewal will take time. The land was wounded deeply. It will need tending, care, patience. I turned to face them all, these people I'd once ruled with kindness and now returned to rule with power. I am not the Luna you remember. That woman died on the pyre, but I am still your protector. I am still your mother, your guide, your shield. And I promise you this under my rule: no one will be sacrificed for ambition. No one will starve while leaders feast. No one will be powerless while others hoard divine gifts. I picked up Sol, holding him high so everyone could see the solar wolf clearly. This is your future king, Solarius, born of fire and blood, mortal and divine. He will grow up knowing both strength and compassion. He will rule not because he demands obedience, but because he earns it through service. But what about now? Someone called out. Who rules while he grows? I do. My wings spread wide again, flames dancing along every feather. I am the Phoenix Luna. I am the eternal flame. And I will hold this throne until my son is ready to take it, not as a tyrant, but as a guardian, not to conquer, but to protect. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound building until it echoed off the palace walls. People were crying, laughing, falling to their knees in gratitude as water flowed through the streets for the first time in months. I felt the phoenix settle more deeply into my soul, her approval warming me from within. You understand now, she said. True power isn't domination. It's responsibility, not the fire that destroys, but the fire that sustains life. I understand, I whispered, watching the city come back to life around me. Over the next 3 days, I walked every street in Hillview, touching the earth, releasing healing fire into the soil. Crops began to grow again, not overnight miracles, but steady, sustainable growth. Wells refilled. The sick began to recover. Children's laughter returned to the streets. And everywhere I went, I taught the same lesson. Power is not meant to elevate the strong. It's meant to protect the weak. Remember that, and you'll never lose the Phoenix's blessing again. On the 4th day, I stood in the throne room with Soul in my arms and made a declaration that would reshape the kingdom's future. The Alpha Spark will no longer belong to one bloodline. It will be earned through character, proven through service. Any wolf, from any family, who demonstrates true leadership, protection over domination, service over ambition, may receive the blessing. It was revolutionary. It was terrifying. It was right. And as I sat on the throne with my son sleeping against my chest, feeling the kingdom's heartbeats sync with my own through our shared connection to the land, I finally understood what the Phoenix had been trying to teach me all along. I hadn't survived the fire to seek revenge. I'd survived it to become something better than what came before, a leader who understood that the strongest flame isn't the one that burns everything down, but the one that lights the way forward for others to follow. The Phoenix has risen, and Alaric's reign is already crumbling, but you haven't seen anything yet. In the next chapter, Lena gives birth to the most powerful wolf the kingdom has ever known while Hillview descends into chaos. Subscribe now or miss the moment the Alpha King realizes he didn't create a new dynasty. He signed his own death warrant. Hit that button. I'm watching.